Which high school should you send your child to? To answer this question, there are a number of things to take into consideration: socioeconomic status, academic scores, and extracurricular activities. Now, before we dive into this, you need to know about the 4 kinds of schools in Queensland. There are private schools, private GPS and QGSSA schools, public schools, and IB schools. Now, I believe the best schools are part of the greater public school system, and also some QGSSA schools. QGSSA stands for Queensland Girls Secondary Sporting Association. QGSSA schools are either all-girls schools or co-ed schools. Now let's dive into the different factors. Academic scores. Now, environment shapes you. It is the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to determining the behavior of a person. Now imagine that your child is hanging around studious kids who are aiming for academic excellence. It's going to rub off on them. Now, if they hang around kids who don't care about school and are unruly, that's going to rub off on them as well. So here's a list of schools that do pretty well academically.
So here we can see schools by rank. Now we've got Springfield Anglican College here, which has been doing pretty well. It's at number 1 with 28 people who went for an OP, and 64% got between OP1 and an OP5. Now if we go down, we can see number 2 is Brisbane Grammar School with 59.8% between OP1 and OP5. You can see here we've got QAHS, which is a Queensland Academy School, 58%, Brisbane State High School, 55%, Queensland Academy for Science, Mathematics and Technology, 53%, St. Joseph's College, 51%, Anglican Church Grammar School, 48.5%, Brisbane Girls Grammar School at 45.9%, Somerset College, 44.9%, and Townsville Grammar School at 44%. So these are the top 10. It might give you a bit of an idea about which schools are performing well academically.
Extracurricular activities. Do your kids play music or play sport? If they do, you might want to take into account the music and sporting programs that the schools offer. GPS schools and QGSSA schools compete amongst themselves, and it all comes back to environment. I believe that whomever you compete against determines your rate of excellence. Now, imagine that there is a soccer team that is a pretty good team, and they're playing against another team that is also a very good team. So the first team needs to be able to play their best game if they hope to beat the other soccer team. So by playing against this really good team, it's going to bring out the best in them. Now imagine that this same team plays against a team that is not so good. They're actually pretty bad. Now what this great team is going to find is that they don't have to work so hard, they can kind of relax, and they're still going to win the game. And if this keeps continuing where they play bad team after bad team after bad team, well, eventually they're going to get into the habit of just relaxing and not doing their best, and it's going to bring out the worst in them. So let's imagine that this team then plays against the same team they played earlier, the really good team. Now, because they got used to not playing to the best of their abilities, they're probably not going to be able to do very well against that team. Another thing to take into account is that private schools are often better funded and have the luxury of state-of-the-art equipment and facilities. They're better funded because they not only get funds through enrollments and admissions, but they also get funds from the federal government. So they get funds from both sides, whereas state schools only get funding from the state government. Socioeconomic status. Now, there's a saying, it's not what you know, but who you know that counts. And if this is anything to go by, GPS schools and QGSSA schools at the upper end of the spectrum are going to be made up of students who come from families of higher socioeconomic backgrounds. Now, the friendships and connections that your child could make at these schools could help them later in life and maybe make their life a little bit easier. Another thing to think about is you don't want to send your child where the socioeconomic conditions are too low. For example, a friend of mine did some relief work at a high school in Woodridge, and it was not unheard of for students to swear at and spit on the teachers. These are definitely not habits you want your child picking up. Now, you may want your child to go to a school with a healthy mixture of upper, middle, and lower socioeconomic groups, which means that your child will be able to relate better to all sorts of people growing up. For me, if I had the funds, I would send my kids to the most expensive private school with the best academic record. For me, all the factors I've discussed earlier come into play. Academic scores, socioeconomic status, and having my kids hang around people with the right mindset and who are aiming for good marks. Having my kids hang around students who have a focus on grades, who come from good families, and also where the facilities are up to date and state of the art. Now, having said all that, I didn't have the funds to send my eldest daughter to the best private school, and she ended up doing quite well. Now, a lot of the money that we could have spent sending her to a private school, we spent instead on piano lessons with a really good and expensive teacher, and we built her confidence that way. And we also got her into a really good state school. Now, at the end of the day, there are many factors involved about where to send your child, their personality type, their current study and reading habits, their interests, what level they have achieved in either sporting or music pursuits, how far and wide they've traveled around the world, and also you've got to take into account how they'll feel at that school. Will they even like it, and will they even fit in? To sum up, I've seen students who have gone to ordinary schools and have done extraordinarily well. And I've seen parents pay a fortune for schools where their kids didn't do so well. What school do you think is the best? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, feel free to share it with your friends. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and like on YouTube as well. And if you have any other questions or comments or ideas for new videos, pop them in the comment section as well. I'm John Petrush, and I'll see you in another video.